Let's be honest, your life is filled with things that simply don't serve you, that get in your way and drain your energy. But have you stopped to think about why you still carry these burdens? Sometimes the greatest act of rebellion isn't making noise, but silently eliminating everything that doesn't add to our lives. Toxic relationships, self-destructive habits, and you don't need to turn this into a spectacle, nor seek anyone's approval. In today's video, I'll teach you how to follow one of the most valuable principles of Stoic philosophy. Let go of what you can't control and set yourself free. Because, my friend, life is too short to live imprisoned by others' expectations. I'll guide you, step by step, in eliminating 10 things that are undoubtedly turning your life into chaos. Not just physically, but mentally as well. These things are wearing you down before you even realize it. And if you don't act now, you might end up losing something even more essential: your inner peace. So start today. In silence, no excuses. In the end, what you decide to leave behind says much more about you than what you insist on carrying. Are you ready? But before we continue, pay attention to this story. It will help you better understand the wisdom contained in this material. The Fisherwoman and the Weight of the Past. In a small seaside village, there lived a young fisherwoman named Helena. She was known for her incredible skill in navigating turbulent waters and fishing even on the toughest days. However, over the years, Helena accumulated a large amount of nets and broken tools she no longer used. Out of sheer habit, she kept everything stored away. Every time she went out to sea, the space in her small boat was overloaded with things that only got in the way of her work. Then one day, while preparing for a long journey on the ocean, a powerful storm began to form. The waves hit her boat, and it was at that moment that she realized the real problem wasn't just the rough sea, but the unnecessary weight she was carrying. For hours, Helena fought against the storm, but it wasn't just the waves that made her survival difficult. It was the useless burden she insisted on keeping. On the brink of despair, she made a tough but essential decision. She started letting go of what she didn't need. First, she threw the torn nets into the sea, then the old worn ropes. Finally, even objects she kept out of attachment but had no use. With each thing she let go of, her boat became lighter, and she gained more control over the vessel. The waves continued to be intense, but now Helena no longer felt like a prisoner of the weight of the past. Thanks to this choice, she was able to withstand the storm, and when the sea finally calmed down, she returned to the port, exhausted but safe. Her fellow fishermen rushed to meet her, surprised to see her back. They wanted to know how she had managed to survive. With a calm smile, she replied, "Many times we cling to things that only add weight to our journey, whether they're objects, memories, or people. But only when we decide to let go of what's unnecessary, without drama, do we find the freedom to move forward with more lightness." What does this story teach us? The truth is, in life, there are many things we need to leave behind in silence if we want to move forward. Often, it's the excess baggage that prevents us from navigating with ease. And only when we let go of that weight can we see our true path. Before we begin with the first lesson, if you find this type of content useful, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates. Now let's get straight to the point. The first thing you need to eliminate is the fear of other people's opinions. The fear of other people's opinions. Have you ever stopped to reflect on how many decisions in your life have been influenced by the fear of what others might think? This fear, which silently infiltrates your mind and prevents you from being who you truly are, acts like a permanent stage under the critical gaze of an audience that, in reality, hardly notices you. Want to know why? Because most of the time, people are too busy dealing with their own insecurities to judge your life. Still, you paralyze yourself. The fear of judgment works like an invisible parasite, feeding off your dreams, clinging to your back, and whispering in your ear whenever you consider doing something new or bold. What will they think of me? And in an instant, you change your course, adjust your plans to fit what you believe to be others' expectations. What an irony. We spend so much time worrying about others' opinions that without realizing it, we distance ourselves from the life we truly want to live. This fear forces us to please people who, often, don't even have a significant role in our existence. It's as if our internal compass is out of order. Instead of following the north of our intuition, we follow the south dictated by society. You wear the mask that seems most suitable for the environment, at work, among friends, on social media. But what about the real you? The one hidden beneath layers of forced smiles and borrowed opinions? Often the fear of judgment is even more subtle. It disguises itself as prudence. Now is not the right time. Maybe I'm not good enough. These are excuses masked as wisdom that, deep down, hide the same monster. The fear of what others will say. And in the meantime, your dreams remain filed away, waiting for an ideal moment that never comes. Toxic relationships, the invisible weight. You need to let go. There is a phrase that has always stuck with me. There is no worse blind person than the one who refuses to see. I'm sure you've heard this expression before, right? The curious thing is that many times we apply this selective blindness to our own relationships. We get used to living with people who, in some way, drain more from us than they add. Yes, I'm talking about those exhausting connections that, without you noticing, slowly drain your energy. The most intriguing part? You cling to them as if they were essential. And I'm not just talking about romantic relationships. Toxic relationships can be anywhere. In the family, among friends, in the workplace. And the most impressive thing is that no one forces you to keep them, but still, you stay there, silently enduring, as if distancing yourself were something wrong. But why do we act this way? Maybe because we were taught that cutting ties is a sign of coldness or selfishness, as if removing someone from our life is a cruel act, when in fact it can be the greatest act of self-love you can have. Self-destructive habits. Sometimes we catch ourselves repeating small behaviors that, if we analyze them carefully, we know lead nowhere. These are those seemingly harmless attitudes at first, but without realizing it, they slowly wear away our mental and physical peace. I've also fallen into this trap more times than I'd like to admit. Small, harmful habits that go unnoticed, like a persistent leak that, over time, can wear down even the hardest stone. But what if these habits are exactly the foundation of our daily routine? How can we eliminate them without making a big fuss? The first step is recognizing them, and that's the hardest part. Pointing out flaws in others is easy, but identifying them in ourselves is a much greater challenge. You wake up in the morning and without thinking, grab your phone. Not for something important, but just out of habit, as if your finger is programmed to swipe the screen even before your brain wakes up. It seems harmless, right? Until you realize you've already wasted 20 minutes of your morning aimlessly scrolling with your mind overloaded before you've even gotten out of bed. This is just one example. We do this with so many other things. That extra coffee that wasn't necessary, that conversation we knew we should avoid, that series that adds nothing but we keep watching out of pure habit. They're small actions that, over time, create a big impact on our well-being. Now, getting rid of these habits is another story. Let's be honest. How many times have you promised to stop doing something only to end up doing it even more? Like when we say, starting tomorrow, things will be different, but tomorrow comes and becomes just another day of excuses. This is where a lesson from the Stoics comes in. These philosophers from ancient Rome believed that big changes don't happen all at once, but in small, silent, and almost imperceptible steps. You don't need to announce to the world that you're changing, nor do you need to make grand gestures. Just start by observing. The key lies in awareness. When you realize you're grabbing your phone unnecessarily, simply stop. You don't need to throw it away, even though that could be liberating. Just put it aside and do something else. Something as simple as taking a deep breath and stretching. If you feel like having another cup of coffee, ask yourself, do I really need this, or is it just a habit? If it's just automation, leave the cup where it is. Sometimes all we need is to interrupt the cycle at the right moment, without drama and without the need for radical changes. Eliminating self-destructive habits doesn't mean you'll become a perfect person overnight. We all have our internal struggles, and that's okay. What matters is approaching them with a simple strategy, silence and consistency, like a drop of water that, instead of wearing away, gradually polishes and shapes over time. And if one day you feel like you're not making progress, remember this. What seems like a small effort today will, over time, transform into a great victory. Perhaps the results won't be immediately visible, but they're like a seed planted in silence. The desire to control everything. Have you ever felt that if you don't have absolute control over everything around you, the world could simply fall apart? Don't worry, I understand. We like to believe that if we plan every detail with surgical precision and avoid all the unforeseen, life will work like a perfect gear where nothing can go wrong. But does that make sense? Still, many of us fall into this mental trap, convinced that we can have total control over everything that happens. The problem is that this relentless search for control is an illusion, and worse, the more we try to cling to it, the more we feel like we're losing balance. So I ask you, what if you simply let go of this obsessive need? You know that habit of wanting everything to go exactly as planned? That insatiable desire to control every variable of life? Deep down, it's nothing but a mental prison, a cell we build little by little, brick by brick, whenever we believe that with enough effort, we can shape reality to our will. But the truth is that the world doesn't work like that. Stoic philosophy, with its timeless wisdom, teaches us that the key is not in trying to control what is beyond our reach, but in letting go of what isn't essential and focusing on what truly depends on us. Think about it. We spend energy trying to manipulate the weather, control other people's opinions, predict people's reactions, anticipate the results of our efforts, but all of that is beyond our control. It's like trying to hold back the tide with your hands, a futile effort, and yet we insist on it repeatedly. The worst part? Every time something doesn't go as we expected, we get frustrated, irritated, as if the universe had wronged us. But aren't we just fighting against reality itself? Now imagine that you carry a backpack. Every time you try to control something that's out of your reach, you add a stone inside it. At first, the weight might seem insignificant, but over time, this burden becomes overwhelming. Wouldn't it be better to get rid of this weight and make room for what really matters? For what you can actually control, your emotions, your attitudes, your choices? The rest, let go. For a long time, I myself was a hostage of this need for control. I would try to anticipate every possible problem, predict every obstacle. If I had a meeting, I would imagine all the uncomfortable questions that might arise. If I arranged a gathering with friends, I'd worry about the location, the weather, any detail that might deviate from the plan. It was exhausting. And you know what happened? Most of the concerns never came to fruition, so little by little, I started to let go. I learned to trust the process. And you know what changed? Nothing. Events followed their natural course, some good, some not so much. But I felt lighter because I no longer carried the weight of what wasn't my responsibility. Trusting life doesn't mean being negligent or irresponsible. It means accepting with maturity that certain things are beyond our control, and that's not a problem. Little by little, eliminate that silent need to control everything. Make room for the unexpected, for surprises, for what's beyond your reach. This doesn't mean becoming complacent and watching life pass by, but rather letting go of the weight of what doesn't depend on you. And you know what else? It's liberating. Remember, sometimes letting go is the most powerful way to regain control. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, true power lies in the ability to let go of the uncontrollable, unrealistic expectations. I don't know about you, but I spent a large part of my life believing that I needed to be flawless. No one told me this directly, but this idea was always present in well-meaning words, approving looks, and that constant silent comparison with others. I grew up convinced that meeting the expectations of others, and even worse, my own, was the true meaning of success. What a big illusion. If you stop to think, trying to reach unattainable standards is like trying to fill a bottomless well with a leaky bucket. You never finish, you're always exhausted, and in the end, all that's left is a puddle of frustration at your feet. The most curious thing? Many of these expectations aren't even ours. They were created by others, family, friends, society, and we accept them without questioning, thinking that we would become better by fulfilling them. Try a quick test. How many times have you felt frustrated for not achieving something that, deep down, you didn't even want? That's right. We set goals so high that when we fail, we feel incapable. And then comes the question, if I'm not the best at my job, the ideal partner, the perfect friend, the exemplary child, what's left of me? These expectations end up weighing more than our own actions. It's like running a marathon while carrying a backpack full of stones. The journey becomes slower, exhaustion arrives sooner, and even when you cross the finish line, the feeling is that you dragged yourself the entire time. What's the point? This is where Stoic philosophy comes in, offering a powerful perspective on this issue. According to the Stoics, you cannot control what others think of you, let alone ensure the world conspires in your favor. What is under your control is how you react to situations. The key, then, is to reduce the weight you carry. Lower the expectations that suffocate you. This doesn't mean settling, but rather freeing yourself. You are no longer imprisoned by the pressure to meet the impossible. You are simply living and moving forward. Of course, this change doesn't happen overnight. I'm not suggesting that you throw all your expectations in the trash at once. Think of it as a process similar to organizing a wardrobe full of old clothes. First, identify what no longer serves you, what never made sense to you, and gradually let go. Some pieces might seem useful in the future, but deep down, you know you'll never wear them again. With expectations, it's the same. Start by eliminating those that aren't genuinely yours. Then review the ones that remain and ask yourself, are they realistic? You don't need to carry all of them. An effective way to lighten this load without generating too much internal conflict is to change the way you speak to yourself. Instead of saying, I need to do everything perfectly, try, I'll do my best with the resources I have right now. It seems like a small change, but the impact is huge. By allowing yourself to make mistakes, you open up space to learn and improve without carrying the weight of constant self-criticism. Another valuable trick, avoid sharing your plans with everyone. The less you speak, the fewer expectations others will create about what you need to achieve. After all, external expectations are nothing but other people's projections, and you are not obliged to carry them. When you start discarding what doesn't serve you, you realize that things flow much more easily. Letting go of expectations is not giving up. It's an act of intelligence. Instead of worrying about what you should do or be, focus on what you truly want and what is under your control. Less expectation, more freedom. The need to always be right. A constant obsession with being right, with being the person who knows everything, is like every conversation being a battle, and the victory is proving that you are right. A silent but relentless struggle. The worst part is that this war is not with others, but with yourself. Every time you insist on having the last word, it's like you need to convince yourself that your worth depends on it. It doesn't tire you, because honestly, I'm already exhausted from this never-ending race. We've been conditioned to believe that we always need to have the right answer, as if making a mistake is synonymous with weakness. Society, social media, and even family gatherings reinforce the idea that failing is failing. But I'll tell you a secret. Sometimes being right is the least important thing in life. Stoic philosophy teaches us to accept what we cannot control. And you know what? You cannot control how others perceive you. This constant need to prove that you know everything leads nowhere. It just leaves you more anxious, more frustrated, and at the end of the day, more lonely. Ask yourself, what do you gain by always being right? An invisible medal? Doesn't seem worth the effort, does it? It's like carrying a suitcase full of unnecessary stones. With every argument or imposed opinion, you add another stone in there, until the weight becomes unbearable. And you wonder why you're so exhausted. The answer is simple. You're wearing yourself out for something that has no real value. Next time you feel that urgency to show you're right, try staying silent. Not out of resignation, but out of liberation. It's like letting go of a pen that you've been holding for hours without realizing it. When you release it, you feel a relief you didn't even know you needed. With the need to always be right, it's the same. When you let go of this burden, you realize you were trapped in a fight you didn't even want to have. So how do you let go of this need? Accept that you don't need to know everything. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay not to have a formed opinion on everything. You're not competing in a wisdom contest. Learn to really listen, not to refute, but to understand. There is a huge difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is a biological function, but listening is an art. When you listen attentively, the anxiety of imposing your point of view disappears. Appreciate silence. Sometimes the best argument is simply allowing others to have the last word. Not every conversation needs to have a winner, because in the end, winning an argument is not the same as achieving peace. Is it worth always being right at the cost of your peace of mind? No, it's not. Next time you're in a conversation and feel that urgency to correct or impose your opinion, take a deep breath, let go of the pen, and let it go. The peace you'll feel will be infinitely more valuable than any momentary victory. If it's any consolation, remember the Stoics. They knew that true wisdom is not in being right, but in knowing when to let go. As Seneca said, true knowledge is not in winning all the battles, but in knowing when not to fight. The digital noise. Have you ever noticed how you are constantly surrounded by digital noise? I'm not just referring to the sound of cars on the street or the neighbor drilling through the wall, but to another kind of noise, the one that's in your pocket, in your hands, in your eyes, social media, incessant notifications, messages that keep coming in. It seems like everything around you is designed to distract you, to keep you in a continuous state of alertness. And there you are, believing you have control, when in reality it's the digital chaos that controls you. The reality is that we live in an era where silence has become a luxury. But surprisingly, this luxury is not as unattainable as it seems. The first step is to understand what is really stealing your attention, because there are things you should silently eliminate from your life. And yes, this is possible, although it's not so obvious. I'll be honest, digital chaos doesn't disappear just because you closed an app. That would be like trying to put out a fire with a glass of water. What you need is to be radical, like the Stoics, who knew that inner peace was what truly mattered. They didn't achieve it by letting external distractions take over their minds. So, what should you silently eliminate from your life? Let's see. First, social media. I know, this sounds like a cliche, but believe me, the more accounts you follow, the more noise you create. I'm not saying you should disconnect completely, but think, do you really need to know what your friend's cousin sister is doing? Eliminate, without mercy, everything that doesn't add value to your life. And if possible, perform a digital cleanup from time to time, as if you were organizing a closet. Get rid of everything that no longer serves you, everything that never should have been there. Second, notifications. This is where things get more interesting. Why do you allow your phone to interrupt you every few minutes? Every time it vibrates and makes a sound, your brain reacts, causing you to lose focus. Not only does this steal your time, but also your mental energy. Disable all non-essential notifications. At first, you might feel a certain anxiety, as if you're missing something, but then you'll realize how good it feels to have control over when and how you check your phone. And believe me, you'll thank me for this. Third, the fear of missing out. The great modern villain, the fear of being disconnected and missing something important. We live with the feeling that if we're not always connected, we'll miss something relevant. But here's an uncomfortable truth. What really matters is not on the screen. It's around you, in the people, in the moments you ignore while you're glued to the latest viral meme. Eliminate that fear. Free yourself from the need to be everywhere. Because the more you try to embrace the digital world, the more you lose what truly matters. Once you free yourself from this unnecessary noise, something magical happens. You begin to hear what really matters. Digital silence is the first step to reconnecting with yourself, with your ideas, with your true priorities. Negative thoughts. Have you ever noticed how negative thoughts enter your mind almost silently, as if they're just passing through, but suddenly they take control of everything? They're like those neighbors who arrive unannounced and worse, never leave. The most frustrating part is that often you hand them the key, not because you want to, but because they convince you that their presence is inevitable, a natural part of your daily life. But what if I told you that you can change the lock? What's curious is that these negative thoughts don't actually reflect reality, but they feel as real as the ground you walk on. This is where Stoic philosophy comes in, with its brutal simplicity. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But in practice, it's something that often escapes us. Allowing these mental patterns to dictate our emotions and actions is the opposite of true freedom, which lies in taking control of our responses. Finally, detachment. I'm not suggesting you become a monk isolated on top of a mountain, but rather that you begin to take emotional distance from your thoughts. They are not you. Just because something crosses your mind doesn't mean it has to stay there. This takes practice, but over time, you'll learn to see them for what they really are: clouds in the sky that remain steady and calm. Negative thoughts are those small things you must quietly eliminate from your life. They don't need a fuss, but care, focus, patience, and inner questioning. In the end, what you think shapes what you do, and what you do defines who you are. As Brian Tracy wisely said, thoughts are not facts, but if you believe in them, they become your reality. The physical and mental disorder. Sometimes when we wake up, we feel that the world is a little heavier than usual. You look around and realize that it's not just your impression. The environment is filled with things: objects scattered, piles of papers, clothes thrown on the chair. And somehow your mind also seems like an untidy drawer. I don't know if this happens to you, but when the environment around me is messy, I feel like my mind follows the same path. Physical and mental disorder, although they seem distinct, are more connected than we would like to admit. There is something deeply exhausting about the disorder around us. The disorganized space directly affects our mental clarity. The Stoics, for example, talked about the importance of focusing on the essential and eliminating the superfluous. And if you think about it, disorder is precisely the opposite of that. It's everything that is unnecessary, that distracts us and gets on our nerves. The accumulation of things not only takes up physical space, but also consumes energy. Every object out of place, every paper that should have been discarded months ago, every item blocking your way, is not just accumulated material, but noise that fills the mind with small pending tasks and concerns you didn't even know you had. Have you ever felt the urge to organize something but didn't know where to start? That's the secret. It's not about organizing everything at once, but gradually eliminating what no longer serves in silence. The first step is simple. Observe, look around, and ask yourself, do I really need all of this? If you haven't used something in a long time, you probably don't need it anymore. But it's not just about material things. Mental disorder works similarly. Sometimes we accumulate thoughts, worries, and feelings, like someone holding on to broken objects, thinking they might be useful someday. The truth is that holding on to all of this only burdens us. So what to do? Eliminate silently, little by little. You don't need to make a big spectacle of it, nor announce it to the world. Just let go of what no longer serves, both physically and mentally. Sometimes silence is an act of rebellion in a world full of noise. If there are people in your life who cause you discomfort, projects that no longer motivate you, or thoughts that just drain you, distance yourself from them. No drama, no explanations, no unnecessary detours. Just let them go. The outside reflects the inside, remember that. Often, external order reflects internal order. If you start bringing clarity to your surroundings, you'll see that, little by little, this clarity will also reach your mind. It's not magic, it's a process. It's like when you decide to clean a drawer and suddenly you feel lighter. Because in the end, each thing in its place is one less worry. Every object you let go is a step toward a lighter, clearer life. The Stoics didn't complicate life with the unnecessary. They knew that the key was to focus on what truly mattered and let the rest go. As simple as that. Living in a world full of physical and mental disorder is like walking in a labyrinth with no way out. But when you start getting rid of what you don't need, you discover that the exit was always there. You just couldn't see it because of the excess. If you want peace of mind, start by organizing what is around you. Do this without haste, without noise, but consistently. Your mind will thank you. As Nelson Mandela said, when the noise ceases, the essential becomes clearer. Unnecessary comparisons. Do you have the habit of comparing yourself to others? Let's be honest, we all do it at some point. There's no point in trying to avoid this truth. Everyone catches themselves making comparisons. But tell me, do you really think this brings any benefit? It's like you're running in a race where the others don't even know they're participating, and the worst part is, they probably don't even care. The problem is, this habit, which seems harmless at first, slowly eats away at your self-esteem. You wake up one day feeling inadequate, thinking you're not good enough, not fast enough, not enough at anything. All because you're looking around instead of focusing on what's ahead of you. So what to do when the comparison starts? Don't try to silence that inner voice, but question what it's saying. When you realize you're comparing yourself, listen to what your mind is trying to tell you, but question the logic behind it. Why are you comparing yourself to this person? What exactly makes you feel inferior? Remember what you've already achieved. Take a step back and reflect on your own progress and accomplishments. Often we forget how far we've come while fixated on what others are doing. Another strategy that works is practicing gratitude. I know this may sound like a cliché piece of advice, but I assure you it's much more powerful than it seems. Life is too short to waste time competing in an imaginary race with others. Comparing yourself will only distract you from what really matters. Living your life at your own pace, with your own rules. And when you start doing that, you'll discover how liberating it can be. Now it's up to you. If you're ready to transform your life and reach new heights, don't waste time. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and share with that friend who also needs to hear this. Let's go together on this journey. The best is yet to come.